All right, so the first story that we have is how many authors are actually using generative AI? BookBub did a survey of over 1,200 authors and trying to figure out what the numbers are of authors who actually use AI and trying to separate it from the noise and the yelling that's going on social media right now. And it has found that about 45% of authors who were surveyed are actually using some form of generative AI, whether it's in their writing, whether it's in their marketing, whether it's in their illustrations, or what have you. Um, about just under 50% are say hard no, don't plan to, it's the devil, burn them, burn the witch. And then just about 6 or 7% is like, no, but I might in the future. I just don't really know enough about it yet. I don't know what to say. So this is BookBub's findings on who's using AI. There's a lot of common objections to them. Thomas, what are some of the objections?
Well, first, this reminds me of an old joke that you probably heard many times as a good Baptist. But you know how Lutherans famously don't recognize the Pope, and Catholics don't recognize Martin Luther. Well, Baptists don't recognize each other at the liquor store. So,
I'm a Baptist. It's funny.
Apparently, I haven't heard that one before. This is a common joke. I went to a Baptist.
We don't talk about liquor stores, Thomas.
Yeah. So you see somebody else from your Baptist church at the liquor store, and you just don't recognize each other. Well, for authors, it's the same way with AI. They'll talk a big game at church, at author church, about how much they dislike AI, but secretly they are using it. Many, many, many of them are using it. So I want to go through some of the reports, through some of the stats of this, because there's also a lot who don't, and there's a lot who are open to using it if they could figure it out. And so the most common thing that authors are using AI for is research. And this is where, in some ways, it's not even really an AI story. It's a Google got awful story. Like using Google now feels like how Alta Vista felt in 2002. And using Grok's deep search feels like how Google felt in 2002. Like Google search has become a really terrible way of doing any kind of knowledge finding. Like Google's gotten really bad. And meanwhile, a lot of these AI tools have gotten really good. And Google knows this. They're just this week announced a whole new search engine powered by AI that they'll be rolling out over the next few months. And this is, I think, a very safe use of AI for research. You do want to check, but that's all, like, to make sure that the research is valid. But that's always been the case. I remember my speech and debate coach back in 2002 being like, just because you found something on the internet doesn't mean that it's true. A lot of people have forgotten that now. But it's still the case. So the number two most common use of AI is copy and art for marketing purposes. So a lot of people are using AI to help them for marketing. So Patron Toolbox type stuff is a very high use case. And it's interesting because I have personally not gotten much pushback for the Toolbox tools. The feedback has been either super positive or like people having trouble because they forgot their password.
No one's admitting that they use them, Thomas.
It's possibly true. A lot of people won't talk about it publicly because they're afraid of the Butlerian jihad against AI.
But not make a machine that likely CP of 9.
If y'all don't know what the Butlerian Jihad is, it's from the Dune novel universe, where there was this huge holy war against machines made in the likenesses of the human mind. But I think using it for AI, or sorry, for marketing is really popular. And then the next use case was outlining and plotting, which I was surprised. Then editing and proofreading. Now, this is the one where people are wrong, because most authors are using either ProWriting Aid or Grammarly, and both of those are powered by large language models trained on copyrighted material. So for people who are all high and mighty about, the original sin of AI, just realize if you're using Grammarly, you're a hypocrite. So if you want to take that moral stance and be consistent about it, you have to be consistent about it and uninstall Grammarly. Grammarly has gone full in on the LLM stuff, and it secretly has been from the very beginning. Then real quickly, then jacket copy, so back cover copy, then writing, then cover art. There's a big other category here I'm curious about. Then audiobook narration, and then translation. They didn't ask about dictation. I think using AI for dictation is a really good use of it, and one I don't think most people would have an objection to. And dictating books is a very old practice. It goes back 2,000 years plus. We know some of the books of the Bible were dictated because the guy who took the dictation literally wrote his name at the end. I, Tertius, greet you in the name of Christ, is right there at the end of Romans, who wrote down these words. And occasionally Paul would pull the quill out of his hand and be like, see, I, Paul, am writing this in my own large handwriting. So dictation's a really common way. Obviously, having an amanuensis and paying somebody to do it's very expensive. And the art of writing in shorthand has been lost. Most humans don't even know what shorthand is, much less how to write in it. But AI can do this quite well. So let's real quickly, one of the things in the survey that came up was objections to AI. And I want to go through these. I've ranked them from what I think are good objections to bad objections.
Here, let me read them. I'm gonna read them in the voice that authors will be saying them in. Part of the joy of writing novels is doing it myself. Where's the fun in getting AI to do it?
So this is actually Larry Correia's criticism. And his argument is writing books is the fun part. Editing books is the work. And by having AI write your book, where you then edit it, you're taking away all the fun out of the process. And I think this is actually very valid. Sure. Most people write because writing is fun, because they enjoy the journey. And if you take the joy out of the journey, they won't do the work. And this is why, if you'll notice, the Patron Toolbox tools, none of them actually write your book for you. I don't have any moral objection to using it for helping you to write your book, but just realize that is the fun part. It's like, for most authors, they enjoy writing far more than they enjoy editing or marketing, which are the other two big tasks for authors.
But let me push back a little bit on it. So letting it write for you, I agree, takes all the fun out of it. Letting it write with you is something else entirely. It's like if you were sitting in a group and coming up with ideas for the way the book should go, which is part of the big draw of Dungeons & Dragons, right? You're writing a story together and you're all contributing to it, and it's really fun. You can do that with AI. It'd be like, hey, ChatGPT, Skynet, whatever. What do you think I ought to do here? And then you look at it, oh, that was good. That was a really interesting idea. And you're kind of working with it like that to create your initial draft, then I'm all for that. Getting it to write for you, I agree with Larry. That does take all the fun out of it.
And I've actually thought about, one of the tools I've thought about building, and you can let me know in the chat if you think this would be helpful, is a name brainstormer. So if you want somebody who was born in 1954, right, having a brainstormer that will give you names that were common for babies born in 1954, and also their meanings and other things, that kind of does that research for you. You as the author are still picking one of those names, or maybe you don't pick any of the names, but it's kind of informed by data. Because some people really know this. My wife, Christmas for her is not actually Christmas morning. It's when the Social Security Administration releases their name data spreadsheet download. She goes and with all the other name nerds, they download this fee and they dig through the names, and it's like split down by state. And the name of our youngest daughter, she's one of only like 2 or 3 other girls in all of Texas that have that name this year. So we had a very unusual name for our youngest. And so for her, that's really fun. And she'll know if you name a character incorrectly. It's like, oh, that name would not have been the name of somebody that age. Like, that will take her out of your story if you pick a name that's of the wrong decade.
I was at college when everyone was named either Sarah or Rachel.
Yep. And Jessica. In our age, Sarah, Rachel, and Jessica were the big ones.
So, all right. Second objection. AI is theft. Period. There are no ethical uses of a program built on stolen IP.
Okay, so
defend yourself.
Okay. I would put more weight in this argument if people applied it even-handedly. But there are many copies, many thefts of your intellectual property that you don't object to. So, for instance, Google has a cache of all books and all web pages on the internet that it uses to inform its search, entirely separate of AI, and it's been doing this for a very long time, as does archive.org. And if you object to it in one instance, if you really think that it's theft, then you would also object to it in these other instances. But in my experience, it's kind of a red herring. People don't really mind what Google's doing. They don't really mind what archive.org's doing. They may not even know because they haven't been inflamed about it, enraged about it. So they're just kind of parroting talking points that they've heard because AI makes them uncomfortable because it's new and scary.
Well, it's
I'm going to get so much hate comments. We got our first 1-star review on our podcast over AI and over politics. I'm not sure what made them more angry.
Well, here's one I think is really interesting. I got to figure out a good voice for this. AI is better than humans. AI is eventually going to put writers, graphic artists, and narrators out of business. I don't want to help Skynet do this. Terminators are going to take
so this goes hand in
us.
hand. And people who believe that AI is going to put everyone out of work also often believe the next objection, which is
AI is worse than humans. It has so many glitches that when it gets things wrong, it only creates more work for me.
So you got to pick one of these. You can't use both.
I'm gonna do both.
Either it's creating a bunch of slop that's just awful, or it's better than humans and we're all going to be put out of work. In reality, we have will. AI doesn't have will. It's a tool like a drill. Drills don't build houses. People build houses. And, tractors don't till fields. Humans till fields using the tractor.
Yet.
And both of these arguments take the agency out of humans.
Yeah.
So
there is only one use case that I think would be even mildly concerning, and it's only if you're like a really bad author, which is readers having a chance to just throw in a bunch of tropes into an AI generation engine and it writes them a novel for them to read. I only see that as a problem if you have not improved your voice and you have not improved your craft. People are going to want to come to read you. They want to read an authentic human voice. I mean, we've already seen that in cooking, right? I mean, we had this big push of chain restaurants in the 90s and 2000s, but then cooking shows came out, and we just see a huge return to people preparing their own food, putting love into the meal, putting standards into it. YouTube is now chock full and saturated of all that kinds of stuff. I think we're going to see the same thing. We might see a whole bunch of TV dinners for a while, but that's not what people are going to want to eat all the time.
And the technology that makes something cheap and easy often eventually kills it. So the spreadsheet made creating a Yellow Pages really cheap and easy. So for decades, the only company that could afford to make a Yellow Pages was the phone company. And you got the official Yellow Pages from the official phone company because it was this big operation, thousands and thousands of salespeople calling out businesses, getting their information, compiling in paper text all of this information. Then the spreadsheet came along, and suddenly you had 2 or 3 Yellow Pages that you could choose from. And printing a Yellow Pages became very inexpensive and a huge moneymaker. So, Jonathan, do you remember that era when there was like 3 Yellow Pages? And they were
it was a
buying
weapon.
TV ads, trying to convince you to get their Yellow Pages.
We were always trying to rip them in half.
But that same technology that made making a Yellow Pages cheaper and easier eventually got rid of the Yellow Pages altogether.
Yeah.
And so the kind of reader who just wants to throw some tropes in a machine and have the AI write their book, they're very quickly going to want to just have an interactive story where suddenly they're playing it more of a video game than a book. Because the whole point of reading a book is that you're kind of surrendering yourself to the narrative that's being created by somebody else. And so if you're creating the narrative, that's a very different act for a very different mood and a very different kind of person. So I don't think we're going to see competition from that angle. I do think some readers will choose to go that way, but some readers choose to play video games. In fact, we have a lot of video game stories coming up later.
I was just going to say that I think this is more going to go into the video game, like a phone video game market, where you're going to play a JRPG and you'll put in your response to it, and it'll generate a new scenario for you based off of your response. I think that's more likely where this is going to go than novels. There's more money in the phone game market, so I think that's where it's going to go.